DPA Open Mic. We are live!
We are live and welcome to DPA Open Mic episode 112.
It is true. Some people are so poor that all they have is money. It's a terrible situation.
At least when you have money, you have some options. No, when you have no money, you don't have options.
Yeah, dude. Like my mom used to say,
You can't even be a furry. You know, fur coats are expensive.
It's
No,
better
that's
to-
very
it's better
interesting
to-
option. I like
It's better to
honestly,
cry
if
and
I'm
have
a
an
business-
existential crisis.
You could actually
than it
do-
is to do so.
you
in
can
your
make-
brain.
you can make your own out of roadkill, so you can save money.
If I may add something to what Vigari was saying, because I thought he made a very interesting point using South Korea, because it also applies for Norway. Norway has like a above average suicide rate compared to even our neighbors and so forth. But and it can be attributed to dark seasons and what have you. But it's still above average, while at the same time being considered one of the best countries to live in. So it's an interesting paradox, especially when you kind of consider having money to be a good thing, which arguably it is. It helps you move around and get things done, and have nice things and whatnot. But it's not the source of happiness. So yeah, I think I'm gonna join Toby's call. I saw someone has already started burning their cash. Yeah, let's just also burn our cash. I'm sure it's going to be successful. I'm sure.
Is there a crow harassing your dog, Toby?
No, my dog is harassing the crow. Get it right, Vaughn.
Oh,
Everything is upside
Yeah.
down where you live.
I know.
Everything's back to front.
Crows are the Zionists of the bird world. Go on.
I just wanted to follow up on Coping's point. The government here in Canada came out with this assisted suicide program, government-sponsored assisted suicide. It's called MAID. MAID now accounts for 1 in 20 deaths. Every 1 in 20 deaths in Canada are now the result of the MAID program because somebody has decided to end their life. 1 in 20. Go look it up if you don't believe me. It was in the news not too long ago.
I saw that. Yeah.
And what the hell have we? Like, what have we created? What kind of society have we created?
I might have read it wrong. I read it was 20%.
No,
Which
1
is
in
not
20.
5%.
No, it's 1 in 20.
Not one. Okay, I read
1 in 20,
20%, which is quite
Well,
more than
still far too. Like even 5% is still
Massive
far too
number,
high,
yeah.
Right. Like that's unbelievable when you think about all the causes of death. And what have we created that a government would even create such a program?
Dude, that's some
What a
Hitler level
sick-
shit.
Well,
I don't
just
know.
a
I'd say that sounds.
oppressed society, and it's just sad. It's unbelievable.
I don't know. I'd say that sounds about right. Just because if you look at public polls of just like people who say they'd, like take euthanasia over having to deal with, terminal illness or whatever, I'm sure it's more than 5% would say that. Let's say they would do that. So I don't know. I'd say 5% sounds probably honestly a little low compared to.
As far as I've understood it, that is just the popular opinion of it. But the problem with this MAID thing is that it includes quite a lot, even on like mental illness levels. So it basically takes away anyone who is in despair, anyone who won't be coping with the system or whatever. They're like, well, maybe you should off yourself, and we can help you with that.
If you have long COVID in Canada, you can kill yourself. This is how far they've expanded.
It's such
the
you can do that in any
indication
country.
of how selfish it is, right? Like this is fundamentally a very selfish and cowardly thing to do. If you're going to die in pain, right? Look on the bright side. Set an example, right? Be stoic and persevere, right? And use what time you have left to set an example.
Think about it. It's a factory death machine. It's
This
some
is not
Hitler
somebody with pancreatic cancer. These are people maybe with pancreatic cancer, but it's also people who are just depressed. It's also the MAID program. If you're poor, you can kill yourself under the MAID program in Canada. If you are if you feel whatever they call financial hardship, time to kill yourself. This is the program.
Trump become president. Go and kill yourself.
It's a freaking death machine. It's like, okay, think about Hitler killing people en masse, like killing the disabled, the mentally ill, the undesirables, going, and now look, they're doing that same thing in Canada right now, and they're just doing it out in the open, and they're like, what? We just made these people's lives suck so bad that they want to kill themselves. That's different than what Hitler did.
Don't let them do it. Do not let them do it.
Do not.
Maybe the Bandera migrants. Maybe the Bandera migrants.
The level of evil.
But it's very
Imagine
scary,
the
right?
level of evil- Imagine the level of evil in which, like, on one hand, you have literal prohibitions on the press to inform of rates of suicide, of like suicide cases daily. They do it from time to time, but they have a prohibition of the amount that they can publish because of the incentive that is on people's rate of suicide. And in Canada, they made a fucking trailer for it. They made a beautiful, very photographically aesthetic, with a beautiful poem and a sweet voice narrating it, sponsoring the program. Like a disgustingly evil thing to do. Absolutely unacceptable.
Yeah, but of course they're going to do that. If you support a program, you want to make it look good, And I don't know. I think it's honestly not that bad an idea. Like in general, I'm pro people being able to make their own choices on that kind of thing. So I don't know. I'd say it's
people have always.
If I can interject,
because then they would kill themselves. That is different. You see, people want to. If they say they want to kill themselves, it's usually a cry for help. Because if they really wanted to kill themselves, they would simply off themselves. What you're calling here with assisted suicide is an entirely different dimension, where it normalizes it and it paints it as in this rosy,
Socially
fleshy way.
acceptable.
It's not the same as what you're saying. Like, if you want to kill yourself and end this life, then do it. And I would actually support that if that was really just as simple as that.
That's crazy
But it's
talk, Coping.
far
That's crazy
beyond it.
talk. This is the real sickness of individualism, right?
Kill yourself, you'll burn in hell.
If you're that much of an individualist, has it not occurred to you that you're going to be lonely? Like, how much of an imagination do you have to work out that if you just shut up for a minute, Coping? If you want to write a really sad story, right? Like about the dog that had a paralyzed tail and it couldn't wag its tail, so it had to fight with all the other dogs, right? If you wanted to write a really sad story, Vojan, listen up, you're Serbian, right? You would write a story about a lonely man, right? Like the Grinch. And so this individualism and this preoccupation with money, of course you're going to end up lonely and miserable and wanting to off yourself, because you're isolating your soul from the community of souls. And that is the root of all evil. And so, I saw a really interesting statistic. Niall Ferguson quoted it. He said that, like, the level of suicide in America now has only been matched once in the 20th century, and that was in the Soviet Union before it collapsed. Right? Because the communist system is every bit as inhuman as late-stage capitalism. Late-stage capitalism says, be an individual and worship money. Communism says be an individual and worship the state, but in the end, it's just it's a curse of the ideology. It's the ideology of the miserable and the lonely. And I don't know. As I say, I don't think you need much imagination to think your way out of this.
But
I'll pass on to Voyan is a communist Serb, so he's going to come in and correct me with his economic theory. Jesus Christ.
Is it Wyatt next or is it me next then? I guess I'll go.
So I haven't been following the last 10 minutes, so I don't know what you have
okay, well,
argued about.
Let's not change the subject then. I'll go. Okay, so I just want to address Rylar before we get too far from when Rylar was speaking. I want to say, I hear you. There may be circumstances where suicide may be preferable for some individuals, depending on whatever, but we're talking about a murder industrial complex complete with advertising and a campaign of normalization and pressures from health professionals for people that could probably not have to experience that, and people we're talking about not just that. Think about the drug paraphernalia vending machines that they have in front of the hospitals in Canada. This is another extension of the same thing. Instead of hearing the suffering of people as of your population as you don't address their fundamental underlying issues. You just want to like have them suffer and like away from public view, so you don't have to hear them. And it doesn't matter if you're getting rid of the undesirables, like the homeless or whatever, with a heroin needle laced with fentanyl in there or whatever, or you're doing it with taking an old person that could have probably sucked out government resources for another decade, and you get them to make that decision. It's a tricky issue. I don't think there's an easy answer, but I think that this tricky issue gets exploited, just like kind of abortion or something. It is a problem now.
What's so surprising, and also like it's very fortunate that we have a representative like right here, because like back in the day when they started all these geniuses and intellectuals that started these brilliant programs of mass extermination to get rid of all the undesirables and purify the population into the ideal that you want it to be, whatever that is. There were people with like exactly the same affirmation. Like it was, there must have been a like critical mass of support, you know, of people with the same smug face saying, no, I think this is a good thing. You know, these people actually shouldn't be here. It would be much better for all of us if we just get rid of all these, you know, undesirable rotten wood, and the tree would grow better, you know, and they went on doing that, and well, we're living in the aftermath of that situation. Like there's a lot of discussion about the quality of life, you know, like people levels of happiness, all sorts of things going on. But like I'm going to tell you guys right away, and I'll take it, you can take it to the bank. The level of happiness of a population is measured in three things, okay? Their birth rate, their suicide rate, and their recruitment capacity. Like how much people volunteer for their, and those are the three markers. Like those are the only three important things that can define quality of life, you know? Because if people want to live, people want to reproduce, multiply themselves, and they also have something to die for, you know? Because it's completely the opposite, having something to die for than like not having anything
to live for.
Not having anything to live for. You know, it's the complete opposite. And like the level of suffering that a person endures in their life is directly proportionate to their desire to live. And like I'll tell you right away, and doesn't matter what psychologists or psychiatrists think about the world, they're retards anyway. The kid that's crying in the mall because their parents don't buy them the toy they want, that kid is suffering far more, and will suffer throughout his life far more than the kid that has to dodge bullets to get a cup of water. Go on, whoever wants to go next.
I just want to add just now. I wanted to say, you know, the about the assisted suicide thing. Like, it's quite scary that if we look back in every one of our own life, you know, there will be times that we thought that, you know, things are horrible and shitty, and you know, like you're in rock bottom. And imagine that you are given the option is that when you say that, oh fuck, my life sucks, and they say, why not you try dying, you know? Yeah. And then given this option to assisted, maybe a small little percentage, maybe 1% of us might have taken the option because life sucks so much, and then you are not here anymore. And I also want to add, you know, for those who are watching, you know, don't be lonely. You know, that's why we have DPA Open Mic. You know, every week we come here and gather. You have friends. You can make friends, right? You know, if you come on screen, you go to the lounge, the DPA Open Mic speaker lounge. 100% every day there's someone talking to you. You know, there's always people no life will be talking to you. You know, every day. If not, then there's DPA forum. You know, there is a lot of people also no life over there. every day chatting. You know, so don't worry, you won't be lonely in the DPA army. You know, we are all here for you.
Even Wayne has friends.
Yeah,
we all love.
See, Wayne is so happy. You know,
That's what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
Like
Like, even if they-
no one is kicked out from the speakers lounge. Like not even Gareth or Wayne. Those guys, like,
The only one who
They're
doesn't
working-
have any friends is Toby.
but that's okay.
Well, that's because he's the leader, right? So we listen to him.
I'm trying to start a cult here. I don't need.
Yeah, it's all.
A leader
You're off
has
to
no
a pretty
friend,
bad start.
but
Cult need charismatic
I can
leaders.
be your friend.
All
If you
cults
ever-
have a rocky start.
I can be your friend, Toby, if you ever need one.
You know, you're the
Smack
South
you like a
voice
friend.
again, Gabriel.
I'll smack you like a real friend.
Yeah.
There you go.
But Boyan is a problem. Boyan is very Serbian, so like we have to work on Boyan,
That's not the problem.
and he's an engineer too. So
It's an advantage.
bizarre.
That- It's an advantage to some, at least. Yes. I have been listening part of your discussion, the last discussion regarding euthanasia. I think we should not think too much to it. I would not want to apologize it in any way, because I do not like the topic, and but I think most of these euthanasias currently are done by people not wanting to extend life-saving measures. You know, I'm not sure about that, but that's my belief. Regardless,
It's still the majority. It's probably still
Yeah.
the
Well-
majority.
I'll tell you right away that all medical diagnostic, and that's all of them, like by procedure, by protocol, like they must give you the worst case scenario. That's their protection against liability. So whenever they diagnostic you, and so the most common situation is that when someone is I don't know how you say that in desahuciado.
Diagnosed.
When someone is diagnosed as
terminally
unsavable. I don't know how you say it in English.
Terminally ill.
Like written off.
Terminal. Yeah. When someone is diagnosed terminal, like there's probably an 80% chance that that person is gonna live on. You know, a couple of those terminal diagnostics before they die. It's a massive, like, so
Happens.
imagine what you do to these people. Like if your protocol, which is it's logical because they have to do that. They have to cut your hope so that you don't suffer further if it's wrong, and also so that they don't sue you. Because if you told them, "Oh, you'll be fine," and then they die, it's like it's your fault. So like I don't blame them for it. Like they have to do that. They have to diagnose the worst case scenario. But imagine like the devastation that does to people's psychology. Like people are diagnosed with cancer and their whole world falls apart. And not only for them, it's a massive black hole in the entire family circle. Like anyone gets cancer diagnosed and the entire family suffers depression immediately, automatically. And so you tell them people not only that like their life is ruined and they're gonna die, but that they're gonna suffer a shit ton before it. And you offer them an easy way out. You know, it's gonna be painless, they say. So like imagine the incentive that is to the population for their struggle to survive, you know, to fight away from a disease, to fight away from a problem, to overcome any challenge. You know, you're suppressing like a massive amount. Anyone who doesn't have like a heroic fortitude in their character to surpass all the challenges that life inevitably are going to throw at you. All those people are going to be like at the brink of failing at the game of life. So it's fundamentally a death cult, a pessimistic, nihilistic death cult, you know, worship of non-existence.
You know, they're incentivizing people to kill themselves. The argument that, well, there's people that kill themselves all along, and there's people that want to kill themselves, and there's people that whose quality of life is so poor that they that killing themselves is not the actually only real humane solution. Like nobody's arguing with that, but what people are saying is like, whoa, you guys are trying to find like, what is this, like some kind of insurance scam where you guys are trying to like get out of paying for a bunch of people's like bed hospital bills by emotionally manipulating them in some way with advertisements and having the doctors talk to them and all this stuff, you know. So I think that's the bigger issue.
Well, I'm really not sure about the numbers. So they seem to be quite high already in Canada. I have also read, like the super chat said, that 20% of current deaths in Canada are supposedly from
1 in 5, 1 in 20, 5%,
1 in 20.
1 in 20.
Sorry,
Yeah.
1 in 20. Yes, but
Well, I also read 20%.
yes, but the thing is, probably these are not young people who are in illness or in a sickness.
Wait,
But
Gabriel, did you
old
just say
people.
Canada's death toll is 100%?
No, I said oh yeah, death tolls are always 100% because we haven't discovered immortality right. Yeah, but what
no, it's because Canadians are immoral. That's why, because they're killing people.
No, what I was saying is that I had also read 20%, 20.
No, I
Which
read
would be
1 in 20.
I think that's probably the aspirational goal, but you know we probably need a few more years to get there. And to answer your question, boys, yes, absolutely. Like obviously, these would be older people, people with, I would think, some sort of physical condition like cancer or whatever. That would be the majority of the people, for sure. The concern, though, is they keep broadening and broadening all the various issues that you could have, that eventually it's going to flip. And you're already seeing that. Like you're seeing lawsuits of people who, you know, went through this program and their families are suing. Like it's a complete mess right now in Canada. Do not, like I said earlier, if your country tries to put in something similar, run the other way. Run the other way.
This is the danger that I see. The danger is exactly normalizing the topic, you know.
Right.
And then some older people maybe feel the pressure not to be a burden on their family and choosing that exactly because of the, you know.
Yes.
You can kill yourself if you're broke in Canada now. Financial hardship is a valid reason. I'll leave it
Really?
at that. I don't know what else to say.
Plus, once it's an industry, like the murder industrial complex is a thing,
Yep.
and you have
Then it becomes
lawyers
a
that
big cottage
specialize.
industry.
Yeah, well, lawyers
Yep.
that specialize in that. You have professors that
Consultants.
specialize in that.
That's already happening.
Now you
Already
have
happening.
who's paying for the advertisements and who's thinking up of the advertisements for this. That's also somebody that's also building their career in a budding industry right now. You know, so once you also have that going for it, it becomes exponentially harder to stop. So yeah, Nanya's right. Freaking don't let them start that shit.
Okay,
How did this come into Canada?
the black hole of euthanasia. I mean, we've made it pretty clear the problem with euthanasia and the percentages and the numbers.
We are breaking up on.
We're just solving the world's problems, you know.
Yeah, well, that's
One
what Joseph
question more
Stalin
for me.
said, right? Joseph Stalin said, death solves all problems. No man, no problem. Sorry, go ahead, Wayne.
Just one question more to this topic. I think it's a very sad topic. But how did this come into Canada's politics? You know, because I remember when 30 years ago in Europe, at least, when I was young, the talk about euthanasia was that it is even also in Western Europe, both in Western Europe and Eastern Europe, is that it's a very bad thing, regardless of its religious, background that is guiding you not to accept such a thing or not, because it was also associated with National Socialism, because the Nazis had euthanasia programs. They had the concept of unworthy life. And how did this creep into Canada's politics?
I don't have an answer for you other than to say that I don't recognize this country anymore, and I'm sorry, we failed the world. I don't know what else to tell you. That you can't. I don't even recognize this place anymore, man. I live here. I'm sorry.
Okay, I've got an answer to this. I've got an answer to this for you, and it's this is a very, very ancient question, and the answer lies in philosophy. So you might have heard of Heraclitus, the weeping philosopher. He was the one who analyzed the existential crisis, which is a term that's used a lot. A lot of people don't know what it means. It's basically the end point of materialism. If you are focused inherently on the material world and you're smart enough, sooner or later, time enters the chat. And you start to realize what Heraclides realized, which is that the past is gone forever and doesn't exist. And the future is yet to be and doesn't exist. And the present is infinitely brief and gone as soon as you try and grab it. And so the material world is a strangely illusory thing, and it's very difficult to come to grips with the material world. It's constantly changing. It's constantly fading into nothingness that we call the past. You can't rely on the future because it's yet to be. And the present, if you try and grab it, becomes a distant memory very quickly. And they called him the weeping philosopher because this is such a devastating realization. So this is called the existential crisis, or the crisis of materialism. And this is what led to later philosophers like Socrates talking a lot about the spirit and the soul, and the realization that human beings are creatures of ideas. You know, we are creatures of the spirit, and we interact with other creatures of the spirit, other souls. This is also where, you know, the idea that the soul is eternal comes from, because ideas are eternal, whereas material things are constantly changing and degrading. So, you know, the idea of a chair lasts forever, but a wooden and steel chair will eventually crumble to dust. So the materialism of the modern world, you know, it should be no surprise that it creates a great deal of anxiety. This is not a new concept. And this is why throughout history, you've always had priests at funerals, right? Consoling the bereft, because you have to have a conversation about the spirit if you want to lift people's spirits up. And this is one of the curses of the worship of money. It leads to the existential crisis through rampant materialism. So that's where all this comes from. But anyway, there are some folks in the chat. I want to bring up what they said. They brought up the issue of abortion. And, you know, we got a bunch of dudes here discussing it, but there's some good points being made in the chat. Abortion is almost indistinguishable from child sacrifice in the old days with Moloch. And this ties into what Bradley was saying earlier, which is a very underrated point, that once you have an acceptable social practice at law, you end up with an industry growing up around it. And so what you have with abortion is an astonishing amount of people who are making money from the destruction of children. And you have all these people preaching abortion to young women, telling them the same sorts of things that the priests used to tell the women who would give up their children to the fires of Moloch. And that is, they would start to preach of the future and talk about how your future is going to be happier, you're going to be a happier person, things will go well for you, right? Soothsayers. And you also have the priests of abortion going out preaching that it's a good thing for dear Mother Earth, and the spirits of the earth will thank you for not overpopulating the world. If you have a look at the sheer amount of human life that is being destroyed through abortion, it is arguably the greatest stain on the modern world. It's the slaughter of the most helpless, and it's the indoctrination of young women into destroying life itself. It's a big issue in the world, and it's reaching epidemic proportions in the West. So, you know, that is an issue for folks to think about. But Gabriel,
is there any communists in the house apart from Toby?
I think my cat believes in the fair division of labor and sees the means of production. Right.
Well, we are a community after all, right? So
We're
we
community-ists.
are community. We're community-ists.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What I was going to say.
Congratulations to your country, though. Argentina have this first surplus, government surplus. Really did it.
Yeah. Viva la libertad, carajo. Yeah, I was gonna add to what Toby was saying, that, you know, I've been pondering this really hard. He brought this up. It's like, so I'm just gonna go with it. I must. I might drop a bit of a bomb here, but like, don't take it too seriously. It's just a thing, another thing that's happening in internet. Nothing too dramatic, but like today isn't any day. Today is a very important day. It's the most important day like since I was born, probably. It's the first anniversary of my daughter's passing, and
I'm sorry to hear that. Rest in peace.
and so the thing is, the thing is that I've been wondering a lot because like there's this whole theme in Christianity of like the great sacrifice that Jesus did for humanity, like and he endured so much pain and so much suffering for all of us, and after my own experience, like those are peanuts, like passing through all the torment, being crucified, dying for whatever reason in the worst possible way, the worst torture imaginable, is peanuts to me. Like I think of anything and I would do it like a million times to avoid any suffering to her, to have her back, and so like what's greater than the sacrifice of one's own life is the sacrifice of a child, like there's no greater love than that one feels. I don't know why that is. Like I have a theory about it,
Unless you're a narcissist or a psychopath.
but that's the thing. I was going there because like I think that there's the most important thing in life, like through our own biology, is ourselves, like our own
Or genes.
preservation. But then there's something more important biologically, which is to procreate, because we wouldn't exist if that wouldn't be the drive. It's not enough to just want to survive. We have to want to expand. If not, we wouldn't exist as organisms. And so that makes sense. Like that, we must first be full with our own self, and then we can want something beyond ourselves. And so the thing is that what I was thinking is that the actual story of the crucifixion isn't actually of Jesus sacrificing himself, but of God sacrificing his son, which would be the real sacrifice. That is the greatest sacrifice. And that's a very old tradition in mankind, to sacrifice the children, as Toby was saying, like the soothsayers saying, oh, it will bring you blessings, it will bring you, and that was like according to the Christian doctrine itself, that act of sacrifice, that is the redemption, that made that ancient pact of sacrificing the children useless. It abolished it, made it obsolete, and so the sacrifice of one's own child can be something like that, like I don't know, because every family has lived it at some point in history. Before in ancient times, it was very common to lose children, and I wonder, like, how did they survive? How did they survive that shock? It's unbelievably difficult to survive after something like that, to want to keep on living. You want to go with them, you want to be with them, take care of them wherever they are. And so how did they survive? And they must have had something that was beyond that motivated them to keep on going. And so you have that type of sacrifice, like a mother who sends her child to war, who says goodbye to her child, and because he's going to war to defend their country. That type of sacrifice, which is the greatest sacrifice, is one thing. But then you have the other side of that, which is like the soothsayer saying, you're gonna have a better life. You're gonna or the contemporaries saying, you're gonna be able to have a career and enjoy life and travel around, and that's the complete opposite. It's the complete lack of any value in your life. Go on, Coping.
Yeah, that was really well put. I just want a small thing here on there where you said you want to go with them, because that kind of presupposes the afterlives, and that kind of explains why would one want that, right? One want there to be a place which is where you're free from the suffering of life, and where you also can follow those you love, But then you also have on the flip side, when you don't have it, when it's just, I wasn't bothered before I was born, so I won't be bothered when I'm dead, right? I didn't ask for being born. I can't remember the interview. I'm not given any instructions of how to or why I'm even here. And the retirement plan is pretty sketchy, right? Like, you never know when you're going to just get this snapped off. And you're also not going to know who you are programmed to kind of be in connection, because we're social animals, right? And so when you have that being taken away from you, and that's a really good question, because I sometimes ask that myself too. Like, when you lose someone really close to you, and especially your child, and when you think about the mortality rates they had back in the day, and the amount of desensitization that must do, I think this discussion brought a lot of questions, but I don't want to be bringing it into a ramble, so I'll hand the word to whoever. Really well,
Yeah.
and Toby in the background, that was beautifully said, by the way, because it covers a lot of different religions, from Hinduism to Christianity to even Islam, right? Like, you need a higher purpose to die for, and the best thing in Islam is to die in war, just like we had with the Vikings. The Vikings had a Valhalla, the very same form of martyrdom, the most glorious thing that you can do, and where you would find the most form of happiness and least amount of suffering, which kind of loops us a little bit back to the merchant class and the warrior class, and you can kind of see, like, and the priesthood class, like what would they use as instruments of societal control pertaining to our beliefs, because we must have beliefs. You may think that someone having a religion or not or whatever is silly, but if you take it from their position that they are just simply like every one of us, we're just put into this shared existence, right? We have a shared existence, but because we are subjects, we all have different realities. And so you can, like, Toby was kind of a little bit in a derogatory way when it comes to those who are kind of like, no, I have suicidal ideation, I want to die, and so forth. It depends on where you're coming from. You may end up having a pattern of reasoning that makes you very liable for thinking, even if you're not really truly suffering, you have made yourself suffer. How many times how do you see, for example, social media causes people to become depressed? There are factors that which basically warps the perception, just like media does overall, right? The world is going to go under, and the climate change is going to be making it pointless to have children, so forth. So, like, you got to have a little bit of sympathy for folks. Toby is a little bit harsh, but still very beautifully said. Wyatt.
Yeah, so just now Gabriel was asking, how people moved on. When you lose a child and something, and from what I've seen in my own family's life, like the story of my grandmother, like, I heard that she was pregnant 10 times, but she only have 6 kids. So during the old days, people like, they lose their child very easily, because they have to do a lot of hard labor, right? A lot of works, so they lose child easily. So I feel from observation is that by having the next child, I think that when you have the next child, the hormones and everything will help you move on to the next one. So, and then you can actually cope. It seems to be the case. Like, even my aunt also, she lost her first child, and after that, when she had the next child and then that got born, and then she can move on. But I think the modern world is a bit sad, because we first world countries, even in like China, where people living in the cities, all the city dwellers, I feel is a bit more either too stressed or too materialistic. Like in Singapore, we have the same problem where people are not having children, and often it seems to be like because both parents are working, so both husband and wife is working, so they are very tired. They don't have the mood. So once they have the first child, and then the hardship of raising it, through they have to work and then they have to manage the child, they just don't feel like having more. At most they have one more, and then that's it. They give up. They just got to say, okay, that's it. It's enough. 2 is enough. Some say 1 is enough. They don't want anymore. And also, of course, materialism. Like, in Singapore, a lot of people, they have a child, and then instead of having a second child, they will say that it's very expensive, but they still go on holidays. They go to Europe, go to Japan, and they like, then they want to maintain a certain level of life quality, of certain luxury. So they rather spend money on those things, and then they dump the rest of the money onto their only child. And then and then of course, like, you put all your eggs in one basket. So, and that's like the curse of the first world. I would say, like, very few people is willing to take the sacrifice, like our grandparents' generation, where they're still living in the village. They can have 6 children, 12 children, and then they are so poor, but they still have the children. They just make it work somehow, and then
It's because
they
you
have a
needed
very,
the
very
children.
good life.
You needed the
But
children.
they have a very good life at the end of the life. You see, at the end of the life, when they are like 50, 60, the life is so
The
good.
perfect life. And just to say real quick to coping, like when you said that it presupposes an afterlife, and it's not necessarily the case. Like, you can believe, like, I'm open on that. I'm absolutely open. I have no presupposition. But the feeling is, the sentiment is just to go with them wherever they went. Like, even if it's simply not having to be here without them anymore. And yeah, to what Wyatt was saying, yeah, that's absolutely how they did it. They had someone else to live for. They had someone else that they cared just as much, and that's what has been holding me as well. But it's hard even as such.
Damn, dude, I'm so sorry to hear about about your daughter's death of her.
It's actually very heartbreaking to hear, but it kind of really brings in
sorry.
very neatly with the topic, and I really appreciate that you share, because as far as I'm concerned, these kind of topics, we don't tend to be handling them very well, and we seem to, for the moment, getting really deep on it. I just want to touch on one thing that Wyatt said regarding like all cities, and this is true also in Africa, where you see like the demographic decline is still occurring, and what Bradley just kind of pointed out there, because there you would have a benefit from it. Yes, if you're in the rural, and that's where you still have the high birth rates, right? But if you go to, for example, the Western world, like in Norway, this is the opposite. You have the young people that are moving to the cities because that's where you have the jobs. They're also an expense, and you have the poorest paying jobs often in the rural areas. And so you end up with just a bunch of pensioners mostly, and the only jobs you have there are people taking care of them, and then some few other things. But basically, like we have like sizable villages and towns that are just like no people left. Like the final person just moved into the elder center of the nearby municipality, basically. And it kind of like if you look at, for example, Ghana, like there I could see it pretty straightly. They have like what you would call a pro-natalist culture. You're supposed to have a child, like when you're at that so-and-so age, and you should at least have a couple of kids, so when you grow up old, you have someone who takes care of you, and that still kind of applies in the cities. But then with all the economic factors that come into play, the economic material reality, basically, of living in a city where having a child doesn't help you, it actually holds you really, really back, right? And so in the cities, what you will notice that they might be generally somewhat slightly above replacement rate for the time being, which they have hit recently. Maybe they're below it already. It's only in the rural areas, and you have, like in the Western world, only one example where the demographic decline is actually not where it's kind of like an exception, and it's hard to tell why. No, actually, it's Israel. Israel is the only one in the Western world, at least, which is above replacement rate. And it's not by a very good margin either. And it's also when you see, like when you go into the demographics of, for example, the rural communities, like I mentioned in Ghana, which applies for most of Africa, by the way. In Israel, it would be like the ultra-Orthodox. And these are people who have, the religious aspiration, a pro-natalist culture, right, in and of by itself. But they are also peculiarly shielded from the material reality, because pretty much every one of them are state funded. Like they get the welfare checks simply by being, cosplaying, essentially, right? And they don't have to go to the army. There are a lot of perks of just being like that, which is one of the reasons of a specific type of religious communities are growing, just keep on growing and growing. And this is like it kind of intermingles. Like, do you need to have a faith? Like, you have a faith in something beyond, right? But then you have to actually, the abstract and the material, they will necessarily collide, right? In our shared existence, we see this happen all across the globe, it seems. Vojin.
Yeah, commiseration to Gabriel. So it's a sad thing when a child dies before his parents, for the parents as well, obviously for the child. Regarding this topic, What are we here for? Some people claim people are born into life without a purpose, without the purpose beforehand. We create purpose along the way. And if there is a general purpose, we have not found it definitely yet. And the only chance to find it is probably our descendants. Maybe they have a chance to find it if one wants to philosophize about it. And this is a main reason to one of the main reasons to have kids. Thousands of generations before us have had kids, and so we exist. And one of the main goals in life, in my opinion, is to have kids and to procreate. I have kids, and they mean the world to me. And as a parent, I would do everything for them. Obviously, I try not to make us parents slaves to them, because it's also neither good for them nor for us parents. But in the end, they are what matters most for any parent. We are kind of slaves to our genes. We people, we or any living being. In the end, we do everything to procreate, and those who don't procreate, well, in 100 years, no one cares about them. And only those who procreate have an influence on the future world, or a big influence on the future world. The world is kind of captured in a thing that Gabriel also mentioned a few minutes ago, happiness, pursuit of happiness, and there is a lot of egoism in that, the egoistic pursuit of happiness, and it's holding us back from procreating, at least having replacement numbers, which is kind of sad. But there is not just these cultural topics which are reducing fertility. There is also our societal change from to urbanize everything, and in the town it's harder to have kids and to manage them and they're growing up. But it's also a topic that we are too egoistic and look to have it good within our lifetimes, and not look that there needs to be a generation that can take over. So that happiness issue that Gabriel mentioned, it is a big. These three topics that he mentioned are good indicators for happiness, an average happiness in the population. But happiness as such is a thing that is difficult to grasp for me. What is it really? And I can definitely say it's children are happiness for me. Having children. So, who wanna go next?
I think Toby.
Yeah.
Toby.
Listen, to me, Varian, you answered your own question. You asked what is the purpose, and then you answered it with like, you care about your children. The thing is, what was Christ's purpose was to build the church, to build the kingdom of heaven, right? That's your purpose as well. That's all of our purpose. We're trying to make the world a better place for our children because we care about our children. Everybody has a purpose, which is to build the kingdom of heaven on earth, right? It's a single purpose. And it makes sense because we care about our children. So that is the answer. That is the purpose. That is everybody's purpose. Unless you are a pathological person who doesn't care about other human beings or about children or about the future. So I really think that if you're searching for purpose, just make the world a better place for your children, which I'm sure you do anyway, right? Like, so I think if you're looking for a better purpose than that, then you are extremely ambitious, because like we've got our work cut out for us trying to build a kingdom of heaven. But to change to a topic slightly, there's been disclosure on the UFO front, and I want to talk about this briefly, right? It's all going to come out in the next 24 hours. This is what they say. There is a mothership that's going to visit Earth. The word is it's going to be 2027. It's going to arrive, and it's going to blow everybody's minds. So keep an eye out for the big disclosures in the next couple of days. It's all happening. It's very exciting. Coping.
Geoffrey,
Yeah.
in the backstage, can you wave your camera? All right.
Hi, new dude. I'll get over to you really quickly. I just the thing about what Toby was rebutting regarding what Wojin said about purpose, and we may not know. Well, it's kind of, this is not something I can profess to know, but as far as I'm concerned, what is. Purpose is a value-added thing. It needs interpretation, right? So when we say purpose, when we say truth in a, say, how do we run our society, it's not like math where it's 1 + 1 = correct. It is 1 + 1 = consensus, right? And so when we on a societal level, because like you said, you would find, like, for example, procreating life, and you can find a rationale behind it and so forth. And one could argue that life in and of by itself has no other purpose. Like the only reason for life is to expand, so like that's kind of like already built into the mechanism. Why that's why self-preservation tends to be a strong thing throughout the entire nature, with some exceptions, right? Ants may have a self-sacrificing in a certain way or whatever, but generally speaking, like if our hardwiring, which has made us go through 100,000 years of a cognitive evolution, and like 10,000 years of more or less, like, not written history, but more or less recorded history, like where we started using tools, we had a Neolithic revolution and so forth, and now over just a couple of generations or so, it's this thing that you said, Wojin, where we have a consensus of purpose, that it is to have children and the next generation, and like Toby said, it will be the heaven on earth. Basically, like we want to make our children avoid the suffering that we had, for example. We want to improve it, and eventually that's going to be, within some framework of religion, like Toby put it, that be the kingdom of heaven. But when you boil it down to it, like be it the Christianity or any religion, it's more that you have the society has a consensus that we have a greater purpose for moving on, and we're going to have children, and we're going to make the society that we're living in better. But where do we actually see that actually being encouraged? And like in what are the metrics? Like we tend to it kind of comes back to money very often, right? No, I think maybe it's the new dude should be permitted to introduce himself.
Geoffrey, no, introduce.
Yeah, I'm Jeff. I go by Jeff. That's my God-given name, the one I got on the screen. But as far as your guys', I've only heard a couple people talk about what their view on life is. I guess that's what you guys are talking about. But there's a big difference between like us and how we relate to reality and the actual reason why we were created in the first place. And that's kind of what we got to get back to, because we weren't really created for ourselves. We were created by the Creator because he needed something other than himself to love as like family. And once we realize that that's why we're here, is to love the Creator and everything he's created around us, then we can get back to the basics of how to love reality. And our reality isn't science necessarily, because that's trying to figure out reality. But what the Creator truly wants of us is exactly how Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden before their fallen state, and that was just to live within his creation and love the Creator. And we're kind of like its pet project, essentially. and we have free will to do whatever. But what makes them happiest is just every time you look at a beautiful sunset, just knowing where it came from, you know, and acknowledging that something other than us created that. And if we can actually understand that, then we're a lot better off than people that want to, you know, manipulate reality. And someone just brought up money just a second ago, but man, money is the root of all evil. And if we could go back to how Adam,
if you're Christian, it's the love of money. Sorry.
Yeah, the love of money, exactly. So my point basically is that a perfect society would just essentially be all of humanity enjoying physical reality without, you know, the evils of, you know, bartering systems and all. But obviously we're too far away from that, and there's no way for that to actually happen within our reality. But that, I'm just saying, that's the way it's supposed to have been. I'll let someone else talk.
Well, I mean, I want to share
real quick.
Go ahead.
Okay, go on.
Oh, okay? I'll just, I guess.
Okay.
I don't share your theological opinions necessarily, but I think that there's a lot of value in those kind of traditionalist ways of thinking. I don't know. We should have a DPA theology open mic. It wouldn't be DPA though. It would be like theology open mic Asia. But anyway, sorry. Go ahead, Gabriel.
Oh yeah, I just was gonna say that the fallen state that you're talking about, like in theological terms, is not a mistake. Like if the creator that you're talking about is omnipotent and good, then this is all part of his plan. And you can see that principle sort of in the doctrine of redemption, right? That it's the saint is not, sainthood is not of he who never fell, but of he who fell and redeemed himself, you know, was redeemed. So like applying it to because like what Bradley says about like not sharing your perspective, he probably does in a lot of senses, just that he's understanding something different to what you're actually saying, and you probably yourself are saying something that you don't fully understand. That's why there's a disagreement, because that's the thing about like life's profound truths. They are ineffable, you know. All the wise men of all history, and even scientists today, with all their presumptuousness, they have to admit, if they have any intellectual honesty, that what they know is a question mark. You know, the closest thing to the truth that they have is just a question mark. And throughout all of history, wise men, people connected with God or with whatever inspired them to their wisdom, they were approaching the truth. They all of the teachings, they're approximations, and because whatever reality is, both materially and transcendentally, it's beyond what is possible to express in words. You know, that's why the name of God must never be spoken, because it's something that, because naming it would be making an idol out of it. It would be false compared to what the real thing is. And that's sort of the nature of reality. When you name something, whenever you describe a law or a theory of the world, it's always an approximation. You know, people believe in the Big Bang, for example, and almost no one understands what that actually is. And the same happens with God. People believe in God and almost nobody understands what that actually is. And it depends on the depths of the person's spirit. You know, how much truth they can handle is how deep their idea of this creator goes. You can call it Big Bang, or you can call it God Almighty. And if your vision of that is shallow, it's going to be false or partial. And if it's deep, then you'll know what you're talking about. And so in that sense, the circumstance in which we find ourselves is not that of like a lost sheep. We still have fundamental sort of instincts or perception, a spark of that divine, and so we know what we actually need. You know, it's what our very being indicates us. And then we have a bunch of confusion piled up on top of that, distracting us. And so it's a matter of actually questioning it and start seeking deeply into our own soul what is that which we actually yearn for and fight for. And about what they were saying earlier, and with this I'm going to finish, about what they were saying earlier about how urbanism, you know, like the lifestyle of a city strangles people's will to reproduce. It's because it's out of convenience, departure from what our being, what our soul yearns for. And that is devastating to the spirit. And I wanted to respond to a question that Toby made me in the voice chat, which was a very good question. He asked me, is that which decays worse than that which it decays into? It was a very good question, and it has a context. And I would say to him as an answer, the brave and robust wild peoples of the mountain that rain down from the mountains and from the wilderness and scourge the decadent cities of high civilization, those people are better than the stagnant, urban, comfortable, and spoiled civilization that they become to once they have conquered it. Go on. I think coping was next.
Yeah, that was a really nice take on the broad existential level, where you kind of also you kind of sort of touched on the thing that I kind of that's my perception. You know, is there a God or is there not a God? And this is kind of a response to Jeffrey. Now, I personally don't think it matters what I believe in that particular case. Like, if there is a God and I don't believe it, you know, a God shows itself, then my disbelief is swept aside. And if I just simply believe a God to be there, but there is no God, well, you know, my imagination won't really create it, except it does kind of create in my subjective reality, because the reality is made by me. What we see in our world, it just is. But if you then presuppose, let's just say, I'm not disputing, I'm actually just agreeing a bit with your logic here, with if there is a God, right, and we say, okay, there is a God, he's shown himself, then there should be kind of one logic to assume, one can't be sure, right? But one can assume that the God who created you and all of creation needs you. Because think about it, if do you make a chair or the computer or your phone or whatever because the chair and the computer and the phone needed you? No, you made it because because you need it, right? So if a God exists, if there is, like, let's say, quote unquote intelligent design behind it, then it would make sense that God would need you, and included in that would be that you must be fruitful and multiply, as they say, I think in one of the Bibles, and you know, basically back to the life must expand, and then try to figure out, you know, looping kind of a little bit back to what Vojin said, you know, ultimately, can we tell? You know, it's up for what our descendants may be. You know, maybe they can find out what's the objective reality. But if it was up to me, I'm pretty sure it's all going to be a matter of consensus. We must find a consensus to why we would want life to continue. Why would we want to procreate and expand and so forth? How would we try to troubleshoot the things to kind of keep the spirit going and figure out, maybe at some point that question mark that Gabriel mentioned is no longer a question mark. But think about it then. If that happens to be the case, may you not very well risk losing your meaning? You know, yeah, Toby.
Yeah, I have to respond to Gabriel's terrible mistake in reasoning and just general depredation as a person. For a start, when I asked if something can decay into something better than it is, I was having a go at the word decay, because the word decay implies a devolution. Whereas had the word been evolve, well then that would have a different implication. Had the word been change, it would be neutral. But the other thing is, like, I want to take issue with your dirt worshipping here. Even if, in God's good judgment, the wicked people of the city had fallen into such depredations, Serbian level of depredations, where they needed to be punished, right, by the tribespeople, that doesn't necessarily mean that the tribespeople are good. They may be God's wicked instrument to bring justice to the Serbs and to smite them with great smote, right? And I'm sure that that has happened on occasion, but that doesn't confer any decency or any godliness on God's instrument. They are still nasty, horrible tribespeople from the hills, and they eat the cats and they eat the dogs. And we mustn't make this mistake of reasoning, of thinking that the enemy of my enemy is a good guy, right? And so, you know, I think you've strayed from the path here, Gabriel, and I will hear your repentance in due course. Prada.
God's great, in Allah we trust, said Da Silva.
Yeah, good on you, Voz.
Allahu Akbar. Prata, you're muted.
Jesus is
Muted.
To the whole respect that God is great. Unfortunately, the propaganda about God is great to the streets of Syria, the cities of Syria, screaming, God is great ad eternum, I don't think it brings anything back to earth. It remembers me actually a very interesting experiment. There was this manager of Auschwitz that in one day he killed over 10,000 people. And that was an experiment. It was not aus weakness, aus badness or from his heart. It was an experiment because he wanted to prove that there is God. And because God didn't react it after he killed so many people, after so much evil, he didn't want to make the evil. He was just making a test. And God didn't show up. And because he didn't show up towards such a horrible evilness that he did, then God might not exist. So, interesting experiment. Anyways, disgusting for other words. There is a very interesting, one of the foundation studies of anthropology from Frank Fanon in Africa, within a tribe, where he studies the relationship with religion that these people had, and and people are always blaming witches for anything that happens. So I broke my leg; it was a witch that made me a bad sight, and so on and so on. People died and so on, but nobody ever saw witches. But everybody believed there were witches. So he came to the conclusion that we need sometimes religion to explain the things that we cannot explain rationally. And in doing that, it's a way to go further with our lives, to get eased from. And of course, we know that in many of those extreme moments in our lives, we get a bit more thinking and questioning more, and that's when I think religion developed somehow more explanatory, more deep meanings of life, trying to make things look reasonable in these dead-end life experiments, frontier experiments. And that's why we also confuse religions with philosophy. Well, Wyatt is from Asia. In many religions in Asia are philosophical, most and foremost. They don't need even a god in order to explain the relationship between man and nature, and the finitude and the afterlife and so on. And nevertheless, what I want to say is that we are pretty much social animals. We construct cultures, and in each culture there are different sense of purpose, different sense of realization, of spirituality even. So I heard people here, they are definitely more old book. There are some people that are more like evangelical Christians, other more traditionalist Christians, and so on. Yeah, whoever. And I noticed there are many, although they all wanted to agree somehow with each other, there were many differences on basis. But it doesn't matter. We are pretty much humans can communicate, and especially people that are a bit more educated have a better understanding of different perspectives. And I wanted to make a critique to our way of life in Europe, and why do we think our elites? Because our elites are the ones that most and foremost pave the paths of our realization, what we can do and cannot do. They make decisions which we are not called upon, or we have very little understanding how these decisions were made, even if we sometimes live in democracy. And in doing that, the possibilities of our life are also very dependent on those paths chosen. And saying that, I would like to make a kind of a critique to our way of life in Europe, where we still think that after 300 years of colonialism, we are still the chosen ones. The ones have more rights on earth than others. And it's clear that this narrative is falling apart for many decades now. The end of colonialism, and so on and so on. The construction of the European Union as an answer towards that. And now we are seeing that the world is becoming multipolar, and peoples around the world are awakening to the potentialities around them. They also many of them work really hard to come to the point where they are. And we are decadent in a way, not decadent because our values are bad. Well, that's another question. Some people argue that's true. But we are decadent because our society is falling apart. We don't have a clear path towards a clear project towards the future. We are stuck into the past, into an easy life based on easy resources, on oppressing the other directly or indirectly. And in that sense, what I want to say is that we in Europe, but also in the United States, we have to wake up to this new world, find our new purpose in this new world, one where we can live with the others in more or less equality. And if we want the resources of another, we have to offer something them that weighs pretty much as much. Or as much as he wants, because there are others around the world that can offer more than we do. So in that sense, is what can we offer? Can we just offer material things? Can we offer? We have a lot to offer in Europe. So this neocolonialism path that was chosen, especially with this war in Ukraine, doesn't bring us anywhere. We have so much in Europe to give. We're still a very rich place. And so I find it sad that our societies are becoming decadent in the sense that we have less and less to offer, but we do have. Just the paths were not chosen in that direction. Voyager.
Yeah, guys, I want to propose to change topics. This is a very deep topic, and it has a lot of meaning to most people. But everybody can choose his own philosopher and have some discussions in small round. I think it is better because this deep topic is seducing most of us to, I think, have a long monologues, and there is not a lot of discussion happening then. I don't know. What do you guys think? We could change topic. Last time I proposed we could discuss the topic of the fire in the United States. I'm not sure. The new guy, sorry, are you American?
Talking about fire, I just wanted to say real quick that I'm going to scourge you, Toby, with great scourge. You will feel the wrath of God through the fury of the wildlings of the wilderlands. And yeah, the cities are the work of the devil, okay? And they will be rained down upon by nuclear redemption, as you well say. So keep that in mind. Then everyone will go back to the woods.
This
Huh?
this majestic language, epic and escalatory.
I say keep the same
fire.
topic, just drop everybody's time down to like 2 minutes, so you don't ramble on.
But religion doesn't bring as much. That's not the purpose of the channel. And you're right, Voyager. Going back, taking example of the fires, it's quite interesting. The bad management of fires has been a problem both in Australia and the US.
We are live. DPA Open Mic.